everybody. I'm your host, Dennis Bradley, once again coming at you live with another episode of Just Law. I have with me the prophetess, Linda, who's going to describe to us the rigmaroles of her personal experience with the criminal justice system and with people of authority. And we want to have an episode here today talking about what do you do when you make contact with the police, whether it's on site with police looking to question you or arrest you, or whether it's a call where a police department tells you to come on in, they have an arrest warrant that's been issued for you. What does that mean, and what to do in those type of situations? But first and foremost, let me kick it off first forward to the prophetess. Ma'am, thank you very much for being here with me tonight.
God bless you.
God bless you. It's an honor to be here next to you.
Yes.
Now, you got a story to tell.
I have a story to tell. I know that this segment is about knowing your rights when you are having an encounter with higher authority, especially with law enforcement. And as I've been watching this unfold, like everybody else that got pulled over, got killed by police officers, and basically those who are black and Hispanic, I too got upset. And the Lord started dealing with me because I began to see certain things as I was watching these things unfold. And I began to see how people were, soon as they get pulled over, they come offensively. Offense sometimes is not good defense.
Right.
And so I said, well, wait a minute. Why are they so angry and uncooperative? Because it happened to me. And I'm a pastor. I'm in a car in New York with a whole bunch of pastors with me. And I'm laughing off to the police officer when he pulled me over. And I wind up getting a ticket. And guess what happened? God chastised me.
Right.
Because that's not what God wants of us.
Right.
He said you have to obey the laws of the land, and you have to be subject unto all authority. So this is why I want to appeal to everyone right now, is that when you get pulled over by the police officers, pray. Remember Christ.
Yes.
Remember that God has a greater authority over law enforcement. Don't get afraid.
Right.
Just call out and say Jesus. If you don't know how to pray, just say Jesus.
Yes.
And Jesus knows when we are in distress. It's just like a mother that have kids. She knows when her child is crying out because they want attention. She knows that cry. She knows when they want to be aggravated. But there's a certain cry that baby will make. And the mother would like, wait a minute. And she knows her own child. The child could be out there with 50 kids and she knows her child's voice. Christ knows your voice. And he knows when you're in distress. Call him.
Yes.
Call his name.
That's a great piece of advice, because with doing that, not only is there some spiritual words there that obviously, when you invoke the name of Christ, it stirs up the heavens and the earths and everywhere else, and you get an assistance. But most importantly, to the greater point also is what I'm getting from that is being calm.
That's right.
Being calm and allowing the moment to be the moment, and I think that's incredibly powerful. A lot of people don't realize that in this great country, we give credit that our laws are inalienable rights, which means that the government doesn't give them to you, God gives them to you.
That's right.
And you have to invoke God in every sense when you're going through those type of situations like that. And that obviously meaning having respect for authority, going through that in a way where obviously being cheerful might be an overstatement. But, if you have a pleasant disposition, it's much better off than having an aggressive one, right?
Yeah.
But now let's go through this process. You get pulled over. You're in New York City or in the state of New York, and police officer comes. And what was if you recall, give us the narrative. What did the cop say? License, registration, or do you know why I pulled you over? To give you any type of rigmarole like that?
I can barely remember all what happened. I remember the ticket though.
Yeah.
But he did say license and registration.
Right.
We gave him that. And he accused me of we just went through a toll, and I can't remember what he accused me of, and I was trying to explain to him I wasn't in the wrong. But nevertheless, I should have kept my mouth closed and allowed the situation to play itself out.
Right.
And I didn't do that.
Right.
And I wanted to be in the right. And sometimes just being quiet is being in the right.
Right.
You don't have to prove yourself all the time.
Right.
That you're in the right.
No, that's a great point. And another thing to remember, tagging on what's being said there, is that there's a time and a place to make the argument.
Exactly.
And the time and the place for you to have an argument is when you're in the courtroom is to argue. You don't want to be out in the street playing lawyer with anybody. So I don't want anybody to confuse this segment that this is a, let's play lawyer with the cop segment.
That's a good one.
And let's antagonize people who are in authority segment. That's not at all the advice that you're getting here today. And that's not at all the story. The reason we're sharing the story here with you today, this testimony, is not for somebody to say, oh yeah, these cops are X, Y, Z. Whether they're racist or they're not, whether they're motivated by things that are cardinal and not spiritual, that's for one, God to decide, and two, for you to make that argument in front of a judge. So when cops pull you over and they do the usual line of requests, which is usually your license and registration, usually the next question that they ask is, do you know why I pulled you over? Now that's an important question. The reason a lot of people don't realize that police officers are trained to ask you that question is because they want you to say you did something wrong. That's called an admission. And an admission is always used in a court of law. So if you're a person who is considered to be the defendant, the perpetrator of a crime at that point, if a cop says, do you know why I pulled you over? And you say, oh, maybe because I was traveling fast, or because I blew that stop sign, or I didn't make a full stop at the stop sign, or, I thought I went on green, but maybe it was yellow, or maybe it was red. Now you've just admitted to the police officer as to what it is that you did wrong. And that they can incorporate that into the ticket, or nowadays everybody has what's called body camera footage, and they can use that against you in the court of law as an admission as to what you did wrong.
Oh, wow.
So what do you do in a situation like that? The first thing that when a police officer asks you, do you know what I did wrong? You can do one of two things. Respectfully ask, officer, why did you pull me over? Or two, simply answer the police officer's question when he says, do you know why I pulled you over? And the correct answer in a situation would be like, in that situation would say, no. Okay? The police officers then usually go back to their vehicles and they run a background check. They have computers in their system, or if not, they have the walkie-talkies that the control centers were able to run background checks on us with our license and registration. And now let's say, God forbid, a police officer on whatever basis finds sufficient probable cause to conduct a search. Did that happen in your case? You remember the cops did a search? No. Thank God. With all those passengers in the car, it would have been very, very embarrassing. People don't understand that once you're in court, the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. The government has to prove that we, the people, did something wrong, and they have to prove that beyond the reasonable doubt. And that's the highest standard that a court has, a government has to prove their case, is beyond a reasonable doubt. That means there is no other reasonable explanation but for the explanation that the government has placed forward. And if the jury finds that, they then have the ability, the judge then has the ability to issue a conviction. So when the police are conducting a search, that's not what they use. They use a standard called probable cause. So if we were to look at, I'll make a little diagram here. If we were to look at a little diagram like this, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt would be up here. This would be the highest standard that the government has to prove their case, right? There's another standard they use in civil court, which is called preponderance of the evidence. That's, if you look at the scales of justice, and they were 100% equal, whoever has that burden has to tip the scale ever so slightly in their favor to be able to prove their case. That's usually the case that they use in civil cases. Car accidents, things of that nature, they use preponderance of the evidence. But probable cause is a standard that's down here in this section. Probable cause is the courts have defined, there's no clear definition, but one would have to look at case law. And probable cause, the courts have said, is less than, probable cause is less than preponderance of the evidence. So if they just have to have enough, an indicia, they say, of something going wrong for them to be able to do an arrest or conduct a search or things of that nature. So let's say, God forbid, you have the unfortunate occurrence that a police officer is asking you to exit your vehicle. Comply. Comply.
Yeah, you should. You
comply.
Really should. Yeah.
And in complying, remember that there's rules that apply to you as a citizen of this free republic, and there's rules that apply to the police officer. What are some of the rules that you should do? 1, comply. 2, remain silent.
Right.
If a police officer brought you out of the vehicle and he wants to say, do you have any drugs or guns in the car? Oftentimes people think, well, if I tell them the truth that I do, then it's going to go better for me. That's not the legally correct answer, okay? It's not the legally correct answer. You want to just remain silent. You don't want to say no, and you don't want to say yes. You want to just simply remain silent. And you want to tell the officer that you do not want to engage in an investigation and ask questions, okay?
Okay.
Another thing that you have is the right to have legal counsel. From the beginning that a police officer has detained you and is asking you questions, from that point, you have a right to legal counsel, okay? You have a right to say, I want to have an attorney present, okay? If you are detained, if you are not detained, obviously you don't have those rights, but then you don't have to stay there. If
Do
you're not
they
detained.
have to read you your rights when they begin to say, I want to search your vehicle? Is there now rights? You have the right to remain silent, that reading your rights to you? Because I haven't heard any police officers do that yet in a long time.
That's a great question. So when it comes to a police officer conducting a search and he's not requesting anything of you, there's not necessarily a requirement that the police officer read you what's called your Miranda rights. And that case law comes from Miranda v. Arizona. And in that case, the Supreme Court found that there are certain rights that the police have to inform you of before you give testimony. And those are the rights that we always hear in the cop TVs: right to remain silent, right to counsel, anything you say can be used against you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's really when the Mirandering process happens, is when you're going to be questioned by the police department.
Okay.
But if the police department is just simply going to conduct a search on the basis of probable cause, that they have enough grounds to look for something through your vehicle, then they don't have to read your rights in that particular instance. They just go through it.
So they have a right to search it if they feel that they think that there is drugs or weapons in your car. They have the right to search it without your permission.
They have the right to search.
Or warrant.
They have a right to search it as long as there's an establishment of probable cause. So they have to have something that they say in their police report. Usually in the police report, for example, let's say you get pulled over for drunk driving. Police officer pulls you over. He asks you for your license and registration. Instead of giving him a license and registration, you give him your debit card and your ticket that you had at the movie. And when the police officer says, what is this? Yeah. You're slurring your words.
Now he has probable cause.
And he looks through the window and he sees that in the ashtray it looks like something that might be similar a joint or reefer of marijuana, and a few nips on the ground that appeared to be empty. Okay, and he smells the ruminating scent of alcohol and marijuana coming from your breath in the vehicle. Okay, and he adds that to the swerving that he saw prior to pulling you over, and your responses have been non-compliant. Now he might argue that he has sufficient probable cause to detain you, to arrest you, and also to possibly conduct a search of the vehicle, right?
I agree with that.
Now, the cops usually use a way around the search, and that's what they call an inventory search. So when a police department is towing your vehicle, they can do a search of your vehicle, even let's say that the reason for the stop wasn't something that gave them cause to search the vehicle, right? So in a DUI stop, maybe you could argue, well, there wasn't any grounds to search the vehicle because the person is being arrested for drunk driving, so why search the vehicle if the person's already been detained and the stop has basically come to an end? That could be an argument made there by a savvy attorney. Now, if the police department does a search on the basis of what's called an inventory search, so they do a search because they want to make sure that nothing gets stolen from your vehicle, then they can go and document, we found a pair of glasses, we found a gym bag, we found a pair of working boots, we found marijuana, we found empty nip bottles, we found XYZ that would then be used and admissible in court as a way for them to bolster their case. And maybe in that search, inventory search, they also find a pistol. And maybe the pistol is unregistered. So now it goes from a DUI stop to carrying a pistol without a permit stop. Okay? So it intensifies. Let's say, well, why did they search my car? They had no grounds to do it. One way that the police department can legally do that is through an inventory search. Okay? So that's something that you could see often when people do that. Now, there's 101 ways you could be stopped and have a police encounter, but I think the most important thing is, first and foremost, be respectful.
Right.
Secondly, be prayerful.
That's right.
And thirdly, understand that your rights are inalienable, which means that they're not given by the police or the government, they're given by God, and you can invoke them at any time. And you not answering a question is not disrespect, it is simply a right that you have to remain silent. And understand the difference that remaining silent does not equal or equate lying. You don't want to lie to the police and say no or yes or answer in the affirmative. You just simply say, I want to remain silent. And understand that once you're detained, you do have a right to have legal counsel present throughout the entire process of you being questioned by the police and you being summoned by the police and you being presented in court. So now let's lay a little hypothetical. You get arrested. Next stop is the court date. Some people get arrested and they get something called a summons, which is a notice to appear in court. Other people get arrested and they get brought into court. And that first day is called the arraignment. At the arraignment, the judge wants to know, there's three things that are established. First, well, there's multiple things that are established, I should say. One, the police the judge makes a determination if there was enough probable cause for the arrest. Assuming that they find probable cause for the arrest, the next thing that they do through the office of the bail commissioner is that they determine whether or not bond should be set, and if so, at what price. Let's talk about bond for a second. Bond is determined basically on two grounds. Ground number one, bond is determined on whether or not you're a danger to the community. And ground number two, bond is determined whether or not you're a flight risk. Those are basically the two things that a court is going to look at to determine if bond should be set and at what price. Okay? So danger to the community, the charges that you have, the allegations made against you, your previous charges, etc.
Okay.
Flight risk, obviously the connections you have, how long do you live in the city, who are your family members, do you own a piece of property, where do you work, etc. Those are the two things that they're going to look at when they make a determination at bond and what they're going to set it at. Okay?
I would like to go back a minute.
Sure.
What if you are stopped by the police officer for no reason?
Great question.
And this is the problems we're having in the intercities. You don't even have to be an intercity. You just could be black or Hispanic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just get stopped and pulled over. So you comply. You give them your license registrations. If they ask you, do you know why I'm pulling you over? And you just say, no, I don't understand. And I think that at that point in time, that's when you need to keep your calm and you need to, call on Christ quietly. If they ask, can I search, do you have any weapons and drugs in your car? Can I search it? Now, at that point in time, because you know you haven't done anything, the police officer is not giving you no answers of why he pulled you over. He just wants to harass. So what you do is, if you know that your car is clean, but you don't trust the police officers,
right? Because
they have been known to plant things in your car,
right?
And saying that, oh, I found some drugs. So now you at a cross 22 situation where, okay, I'm complying, but I can't trust because I don't want to go to jail and I don't want to get shot.
Right.
So you're at a very dark place at that point because now your heart is racing, your mind is not thinking correctly. I don't know exactly what can a person do as they're calling on Christ. What steps should they take? Should they allow them to search it or just say no because I haven't done anything wrong? And I can't agree to you searching because I don't trust you. And that's the sad thing.
Right.
And that's because of the police department have not changed their outlook and outline on how to make it feel safe for the people that they're supposed to be serving.
Sure.
So I would decline it.
Yeah, and you would.
I would decline you
smart.
searching it because I can't trust you. And if the police say that to me, and this is me as a pastor, and I have to decline that search, even though I know everything is good, but I can't trust you because I've seen too many horrible stories. So trust is something you got to earn.
100%.
So my thing is that, okay, the police officer is going to try to continue to push your buttons to get you to lash out. And this is where calmness has to come in.
100%.
This is when you really got to keep your cool, because they're going to do everything in their power to get you to get angry. And
Right.
once you get angry, everything is going to fall and go downhill from that point.
100%.
So this is my suggestion, and it's just fell in my spirit. Resist the devil, and he shall flee.
Yes.
Be quiet. The devil likes to provoke. He wants you angry, because when you're angry, you're off your game. You don't think. And now he controls you. Because anger is not a bad thing. The Bible says, be angry and sin not. But see, Satan will get you to sin when you're angry.
Right.
Because I'm black, I'm Hispanic, I'm a male, and you're doing this to me, you're picking on me. And so those things are coming to your mind. You done killed this person, you're going to kill me, I got a family. And so all these things is playing in your mind.
Right.
And so now the anger going to turn to fear and anger.
Absolutely.
The best thing is don't say nothing. Once you gave your answer,
Right.
no, you can't search.
Right.
Let it go.
Yeah.
And if he wants to keep harassing you and yelling at you and cursing you and calling you out slur, he's on his camera.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very important part. The cameras have been the saving grace of a lot of people in this day and age of the 21st century, that you can record and you can have whatever interaction you have with the police recorded. And I pray and hope that that's not an experience for most folks, but nevertheless it is an experience for a lot of people that have a very negative interaction with the police department. But exactly what you said is exactly how you need to handle it, is that understanding your rights and invoking your rights and standing firm on your ground when you give an answer is exactly how you go about doing that. Is just, if a cop asks you, they have the ability to search your vehicle, the answer is no. Whether you did something wrong or you did not do something wrong, there's never a reason to allow a police officer to violate your rights and to do something that there's no grounds for it, okay? If the cop feels that he's established probable cause to conduct a search, then by all means let him do what he needs to do. Understand that you do have your day in court and that those people will be held to account, and they're going to have to respond to what they did in terms of violation of those rights. And understand also that when you do not consent and something is found and there isn't an establishment of probable cause, even though it's a lower standard, nevertheless it is a standard, and they do have to prove their case to show that they did establish probable cause to do that search, and they violated that. Even if they found something, you can get that item they found suppressed and not presented at court. And if the item is of key value importance, like in the example of a firearm, if you get that item suppressed and it doesn't come forward, then there goes the case. The case in its entirety would be able to be dismissed if you have something like that happen. So stand your ground and stand firm on what a police officer is or is not able to do to you, okay? The other thing that I think is of importance is that you can always pull over in a place where it is safe to do so. That is the driving laws in the state of Connecticut. When the cops put on the siren, you don't just you didn't just stop in the middle of the street, right? You pull over to a place that it is safe. So I would suggest to folks that in being respectful, pull over to a place where both the officer's safe and you feel safe. You know what I mean? If you don't feel safe in a dark area, you can wait to go to a well-lit area. It creates safety for the police officer and it creates safety for you. So those are things you have to be mindful of as well, right? That the safety isn't just living in an urban center and saying, well, there's no place to park here, so I drove up towards a gas station, or I drove up towards a place where we could not impede traffic. Those are all smart maneuvers that would create safety for everybody. The other thing I would tell folks is when being pulled over, that talk, as they say, that we have with our children, and I've had my father give unto me, you don't want to do anything that will put the police officer in high alarm, okay? What are the things that put police officers in high alarm? Obviously, sudden movements in the vehicle. Reaching through a glove box before you're told license and registration. Wait. Let the police officer ask you for the license and registration. Don't be, moving around your waistband and moving down towards the glove box to preempt the question that they're going to ask you. Keep your hands on the wheel. Wait for the police officer to ask you the question of license and registration, and then you can go forward and look where you need to look and give them what you need to look and give them what you need to give them, because a lot of times things are lost in interpretation, right? Your interpretation is you're just getting your license and your registration. His interpretation is you're reaching for a gun or something, right? So even though he might be dead wrong, we don't want to put ourselves in a position like that. And always, 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 even when you're being the most reasonable, most precautious, most respectful, most spiritual person, your fight is always in the courtroom.
I like
always
that.
in the courtroom. So once you go through that process, and God forbid you are arrested, stay calm.
Yeah.
It's a process, and you're going to feel embarrassed, and you're going to feel ridiculous, especially if you've been wrongfully charged. You're going to feel indignified by the process that you're going through. Stay calm. It's a process. But make sure that you find yourself a quality attorney who understands the process of criminal court and is willing to zealously fight for you. And I say that because people don't understand that the courtroom is an adversarial process. We, the criminal defense attorneys, defend you against the government who is trying by every means to put you in prison or have a negative consequence. At the same token, your attorney needs to be also fighting tooth and nail to make sure that that process is fair and that nothing happens to you that's in violation of your constitutional rights. So the bond process is where the court sets a bond, and there's different ways to pay the bond here in the state of Connecticut. One, you can pay the bond directly. So if they put a $20,000 bond, you're required to pay 10% of that $20,000 bond in the state of Connecticut now. So that means you'd have to come up with $2,000, if they put a $20,000 bond on you. And the good news is that you get that money back. Now, if it exceeds a certain amount, the only way you can put the 10% is if you get a bail bondsman. The bail bondsman folks are there to ensure to the court that you're going to return and to put an insurance on the bond that's owed, and you enter into a payment plan with them to be able to get yourself out of prison and not have to, be able to be bonded out, as they say. So those are basically it. Either you pay it directly or you use the services of bail bondsman if there's a bond that's set on you. Oftentimes, people get what's called PTA, which is a promise to appear. If you get a PTA, you just simply come back with an appearance. The other arguments that your attorneys could make is that you get electronic monitoring or GPS monitoring. That's a way to reduce the bond but allow you not to be held in custody, or to have a bond that's reduced from the amount that originally was set. Once the bond is set and not guilty, jury elections are entered, the court gives you a new date so that your attorney can get discovery from the state, which is the police report and the evidence they have against you, and you should sit down at some point soon in the future with your attorney to go over that documentation. It is vital that you're helpful and truthful with your lawyer. Remember that what you say to attorney is confidential. We cannot tell anybody. We cannot share that information with anyone, especially not the government, okay? And there's things that we can do to help people, even if you are guilty of what you did, to ensure that your rights are protected. Remember that even though you might have done something, it's the government's burden to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, okay? And in doing that, usually it creates a fairness in terms of what the punishment, if any, should be to someone who did something that wasn't exactly correct in terms of the law, okay? But those are things that you have to understand, that it is a process. You do have rights throughout that whole process, and there should be a degree of patience, divine inspiration, and understanding that, through this, God is going to mold you and he's going to make you a better person, and that there's been no one who I know who hasn't been through a process that doesn't come out of it either a better or a worse person. And we pray that it's a better person.
And unfortunately, there have been some situations where we have watched where the police officer had actually, I would say, physically hurt and abused the people for no reason. And I'm beginning to see it with those who are seniors as well. Some have died from their wounds, that the police officers took the laws in their own hands. But this is what my heart feels for those police officers, and I know there are good ones out there. Spill the beans. Find a way to get those police officers off the street. It is your responsibility and accountability, because you took an oath before Christ,
right,
to protect and serve, to protect. And if you don't protect the innocents, you just as guilty as the one who pulled the trigger. Remember that. And you're going to have those spiritual blood on your hands.
Right.
So you need to go with the other good cops and find some way to get those bad seeds out of there. And I'm talking to the police chiefs. It is your responsibility because you're the leaders.
Yes.
To do the same thing. I'm talking to the mayors. Because you're over the police chiefs. It's your responsibility to oversee this. To make sure that the officers are complying with the oath that they took. Because too many people have died at those hands. They have been hurt. Children.
Yes.
I've seen 12-year-olds being slammed to the ground. And that is horrible. Kids are having nightmares of fear of the police officers whom they're supposed to go up to and say, I'm lost.
Yes.
Or I have a drug problem. Can you help me? They can't. When the last time you have seen a child go to a police officer for help?
Right.
Especially a black and brown child.
Very rare.
And that is a sad thing to be. They're not growing up and saying, I want to be a police officer. You don't see the young kids with the police uniform playing cops and robbers anymore. Because they have no trust, and they have no admiration and respect for law enforcers.
Right.
And that's a sad thing. And it's all law enforcers, all law enforcement needs to do something better than what you're doing. I know these are your brothers and sisters in arms, and you'll have a code that they're there to help and protect each other. But you also have a greater responsibility for the public that you say you're serving and protecting. Protect these children the right way. And stop seeing these mothers and fathers crying because their babies are dead for no reason. You're nothing but a thug or a gang if you keep doing it this way. Do better. Those are my final words.
Well, we're going to have to leave it with that. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for Just Law. Your host, Dennis Bradley, here with the Prophetess this time. And we appreciate everything you're doing. God bless you, Linda. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
God
you.
bless you.
God bless you. Love you.
Stay tuned.